For decades, the word conspiracy has been used as a shortcut to dismissal, a way to end a conversation before it begins. But history has a habit of doing something uncomfortable. What if I told you the CIA once built a gun designed to cause an instant heart attack with no trace? Or that America's own military proposed staging attacks on its citizens to justify a war? Or that the US government deliberately poisoned alcohol, knowing thousands of Americans would drink it? Usually, these sentences end a conversation. They are dismissed as paranoia. But today, we are not looking at rumors. We are looking at the admitted crimes, the declassified files, the cold, hard facts. These are conspiracy theories that stopped being theories. Let's start with something that sounds like it was ripped straight out of a James Bond movie. For years, people whispered that the CIA had a way to kill anyone, anywhere, without leaving a trace. He died of natural causes, they would say, just a sudden heart attack. Critics called this a fantasy, science fiction, until 1975. During a Senate investigation into intelligence abuses, the CIA was forced to reveal a secret weapon. It was a modified pistol with a scope, but it didn't fire lead bullets. It fired a tiny dart, no wider than a human hair, made of frozen water and shellfish toxin. The dart was designed to penetrate clothing and skin, leaving nothing but a tiny red dot, like a mosquito bite. Once inside the body, the ice would melt. The toxin would enter the bloodstream and cause massive cardiac arrest. The victim dies instantly. And here is the terrifying part. The toxin denatures quickly. If an autopsy is performed, the coroner finds nothing, just a natural heart attack. The weapon was real. It was sitting right there in the Senate hearing room, which makes you wonder, if they showed us that gun in 1975, what kind of weapons do they have today? If a heart attack gun isn't scary enough, let's talk about treason. In the early 1960s, the US military was desperate to go to war with Cuba. They wanted to remove Fidel Castro. But the American public didn't want war. They needed a reason. They needed to be angry. So, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest-ranking military officers in America, came up with a plan. It was called Operation Northwoods. The conspiracy theory was that the government would stage fake terrorist attacks on US soil to justify a war. People were called crazy for suggesting it, but the documents are now public, and they are chilling. The plan proposed hijacking planes, blowing up American ships, even staging violent terrorism in the streets of Miami and Washington, D.C. They were willing to kill innocent American citizens and blame it on Cuba just to get their war. The plan was approved by the Joint Chiefs. It was signed. It was ready to go. The only reason it didn't happen? President John F. Kennedy rejected it. He looked at the plan and said no. A few years later, JFK was assassinated. But that is a theory for another day. Let's go back to the 1920s. Prohibition. Alcohol is illegal, but everyone is still drinking. People are making moonshine in their basements. The government is frustrated. They can't stop the flow of booze. So, the FBI decides to take drastic measures. Rumors started spreading in the streets. The government is poisoning the alcohol. Don't drink it, you'll go blind, you'll die. Most people thought it was just a scare tactic. Propaganda. It wasn't propaganda. Industrial alcohol was often stolen by bootleggers and redistilled to make it drinkable. Knowing this, the government ordered manufacturers to add lethal chemicals to the industrial supply. Kerosene, chloroform, acetone. They knew people would steal it. They knew people would drink it. And they did it anyway. The result was a massacre. On Christmas Eve alone, dozens of people dropped dead in New York City. By the time Prohibition ended, it is estimated that over 10,000 Americans died from poisoned alcohol. The government essentially murdered its own citizens to teach them a lesson. And for decades, they denied it ever happened. This is the grandfather of all conspiracy theories. For 20 years, people claimed the CIA was kidnapping citizens and experimenting on their brains. They talked about mind control, LSD, electric shocks. It sounded like a nightmare. But in 1977, a Freedom of Information Act request uncovered 20,000 documents that proved the nightmare was real. Project MKUltra ran from 1953 to 1973. The goal? To crack the human mind, to create a Manchurian candidate, a person who could be programmed to kill or obey without question. The CIA drugged unwitting Americans with massive doses of LSD. They used sensory deprivation, hypnosis, and sexual abuse. They experimented on prisoners, mental patients, and even their own employees. Most of the files were destroyed by CIA Director Richard Helms in 1973, so we will never know the full extent of the horror. But we know enough to say this: the government tried to hack the human brain, and they destroyed thousands of lives in the process. Finally, let's talk about a conspiracy that you are probably wearing right now. Diamonds. We are told they are rare. We are told they are valuable. We are told they mean forever. But what if I told you that diamonds are actually kind of worthless? In the late 19th century, massive diamond mines were discovered in South Africa. Suddenly, diamonds weren't rare anymore. They were everywhere. The British investors realized that if the market was flooded, the price would crash to zero. So, they formed a cartel called De Beers. They bought all the mines. They locked the diamonds in vaults in London. They created an artificial scarcity. But they had another problem. Middle-class people didn't buy diamonds. So in 1938, they launched one of the biggest psychological operations in history. They hired Hollywood. They paid movie studios to show scenes of men proposing with diamond rings. They invented the slogan, "A diamond is forever." Before this campaign, only 10% of engagement rings had diamonds. After, 80%. They brainwashed the entire world into spending 2 months' salary on a rock that isn't rare and has almost no resale value. It is the perfect conspiracy, because even when you know the truth, you'll probably still buy one. We like to think that truth always wins. But looking at MKUltra, or the heart attack gun, or the thousands poisoned during Prohibition, you have to ask yourself a question. These are the secrets they admitted to. These are the files they didn't burn. So, what are the secrets they are still keeping? Maybe the tinfoil hat guys aren't so crazy after all.